Hi, I'm Christy, and this is Conversations with Clients, where I share tidbits, insights, nuggets of wisdom, hopefully, that come up in session in hopes that they might be helpful to you as well. So today's chat is about trauma, and this doesn't stem out of any one particular conversation I've had with a client, mostly because this is a conversation I have with literally every client I work with. In fact, it's the first conversation I have with every single client I work with. And that's because I specialize in trauma. In my opinion, trauma is at the heart of so much of our mental distress and mental dis-ease. And so it informs so much of how I look at case presentations, how I conceptualize what's going on for clients. And so it's really important to me that clients understand what trauma is and how trauma shows up in our system because it has a really big impact on treatment, and I want clients to understand why we're doing what we're doing in therapy. So what is trauma? A lot of times when I say trauma, people's minds immediately go to like war and assault and the worst possible things we could think of, and certainly those can be traumatic. That said, on a neurological level, on our brain level, our nervous system level, trauma is not actually an external event. It's not something that happens to us. It's an internal event. It's what happens inside or what is not able to happen inside. It's how our system responds to what's happening on the outside. So trauma is what happens when the external event is greater than our internal processing capacity, our ability to understand it, make sense of it, and move on from it. If an experience is too big, too overwhelming, too much, and our system isn't able to process it, that is traumatic. If your brain was a computer, trauma would be anything that overloads the system, anything that exceeds the bandwidth and causes that annoying little pinwheel to come up. So trauma equals external experience plus insufficient internal resources, insufficient internal processing capacity. Trauma is an internal event, not an external event. And that's really important because when you think about it that way, it's hard to imagine anybody that doesn't have some forms of trauma. Whether that affects them on a day-to-day basis, whether they identify as being traumatized or not, might be very different. But most of us have had experiences where the demands of the external world have exceeded our internal resources, our processing capacity, right? It's just not that hard to overwhelm stressed brains, tired brains, small brains. And by small brains, I mean child brains, young people brains, not any other way that could be interpreted. Right, so sometimes these types of traumas are called small t traumas or attachment traumas, developmental traumas. I tend to think about them as like the invisible traumas. Sometimes they don't have the same shock and awe of so-called big T traumas, and so they often go missed. They're unseen, they're unrecognized, and untreated. But they are no less traumatic. An analogy that I use a lot is that our mind kind of digests experiences the way that our gastrointestinal system digests food. If everything's working well, we eat something, our system processes it, absorbs the good stuff, and lets go of everything else. And same thing with our mind. In best case scenario, and in most circumstances, we have experiences, we take in experiences, our minds process it, it extracts the relevant information, and it lets everything else go. However, just like if we eat something we can't digest, it causes a lot of gastric distress. When we have experiences that our minds can't digest, it causes a lot of mental distress. And those unprocessed pieces of experience repeat on us. And they repeat in the form of thought patterns, emotional patterns, behavioral patterns, relationship patterns, right? Which kind of makes those mental flatulence. Luckily, there are mental digestive aids, therapies that work on an adaptive information processing model, topic for another day. Therapies like EMDR, sensory motor psychotherapy, somatic experiencing, deep brain reorienting, there are more. They work kind of as mental digestive aids. They help the nervous system process undigested pieces of experience. They help the system make sense of it, understand it, and let go of things that couldn't be processed and digested at the time. So that's my spiel on trauma, mental digestion, and mental flatulence. So hopefully that was helpful. And if you have questions, I might have answers. So put them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Take care.